All right, just up front. So if anybody asks me about service hours or where the money is, I might have a stroke. So be careful, be gentle. We'll keep it all mellow today. Just kidding. But anyway, it's great to be back. I appreciate all the kind thoughts and support as I went through a bunch of surgeries and recovery. So I'm glad to be back. So let's get right into it. I heard you guys had a webinar while I was gone, didn't tell me. And you talked about program area hours and expenses. So I drafted that little communique when I came back to try to kind of demystify. The thing about the service hours is our systems don't collect service hours accurately. Plus, it wasn't in the bill. It was just in the budget bill from the legislature. It was just hours of instruction only. So number one, we'd have to change our systems that collect the data to do a better job of collecting service hours. And number two, we'd have to figure out, why we made these changes if it wasn't in the legislation. I know all of you are providing service hours, and with the COVID situation, it's become a more critical piece to the operation of adult schools and non-credit programming. But for this exercise, it's kind of kept internal. We have Tim Harmon, who was on the webinar last week or last month. He calculates, the hourly rate, looking at expenses and hours of instruction. So that helps us determine if we ever go to the legislature or if CCAE or ACE goes to the legislature with a different model, at least we have this data to go on. And I know service hours would be critical to that model, but we probably need to get a field team to look at that and work with CASAS and West Ed to figure out a better way of collecting that. So I think the only direction we gave you in that memo was we don't want members reporting like, oh, I got 400 hours in ESL and then not report any expenditures, because that really skews the data. That makes the hourly rate go up significantly if there's no balance. And so we've seen some that report like, oh, I got all these hours in ESL, but no expenses, and I've got no hours in CTE, but I've got all these expenses. So we want to avoid those, what we call zero entries. So if you have a program area that your member is offering, we want to see hours of instruction and then expenses associated with that. The other thing is we're not just tracking CAEP dollars, we're tracking, all the fund sources. So maybe you're using your CAEP dollars for services, but you're using your non-credit apportionment to run classes. So for this exercise, we'd want to see your non-credit apportionment hours and those expenses associated with. So don't be confused that just because you're not using CAEP for instruction, you don't have to report. So I'll pause there. Veronica, were there any questions? Because I haven't been looking at the chat as I kind of went through a stream of consciousness there.
So there was one question from Shannon. She asks, what if we have no instructional hours but expenses my position?
Oh, so that would be like for, yeah, I understand. So you wouldn't have to report that, Shannon, because we don't want to skew, because putting in those expenses not associated with hours kind of skews the whole intent of it. And that's okay. You're not going to get dinged or anything. We just want to have good data. When we build this model, we want to have accurate information. So we're more than happy that that member doesn't report. So I think you're good. if that made sense.
And that is the only, oh, she said, so leave it as 0.
Well, yeah, just don't report. So Veronica, do you want to just kind of walk people through how you make a member optional so it doesn't hold up the certification of your program area submission?
Well, that is done during the CFAP process when they have members who are voting only, non-funded.
Uh-huh.
So that's how the program area reporting is prompted to
Okay.
the option of
So they can't go in now and make someone optional for the program area report. They can just leave it at 0 and not report.
Yeah.
They won't get dinged, but they'll still be able to certify, right?
Yeah, they will have to physically go in and enter those zeros and then save the estimates and then again submit the actuals. So someone will actually have to do that, but they are able to submit basically blank reports.
Okay. All right. I see Kelly has a question. If we are using CAEP funds for cross-department services, we have developed a methodology based on FTS. Does that work? As long as, you know, your accounting office or whoever reports that data is comfortable with that, Kelly, I'm fine with you guys using that. I know from the last webinar, you know, there was some concern about consistency, but it's difficult because the colleges and K-12s don't do stuff exactly the same. Their systems are different. K-12 adults don't have a ADA FTES type system. The colleges do. CASAS collects hours for their WIOA 2 and CAPE members, so we have access to that. Non-WIOA, non-CASAS reporting colleges don't have that luxury. So there is going to be some variation. And when Tim did his study, he tried to control for the variation. And that's why we came up with the 0 entry. It's a start. There's so much more we could do. But being that this isn't critical to us getting the funding, it's more like research. I think we're okay with how you're doing it because it really has provided some insight. But if we relied on this to do some kind of performance-based funding or allocations, I think we would have to put a lot more work into it. And we're not doing that right now. So I think all is good for now. And Kelly, you can go ahead with that methodology. Let's see. Did someone get Jody the phone number? I hope.
Yes, Holly did.
Okay. All right. And then so Kristen says, so we shouldn't report consortia level spending, only program level spending. Yeah, if it's not associated with hours of instruction, but I mean, that's the way I look at it, it's running the program. So there are going to be some admin costs, Kristen, associated with that. So for you're paid from Hartnell. And so if Hartnell has hourly instruction, and then you have these admin costs, I mean, I think I would report it. I wouldn't exclude it just because that's the cost of running the classroom. That classroom wouldn't be there without the custodian, without the admin support, without the consortium support. So that's all the cost of doing business. So I hope that makes sense.
Right. I just am wondering for those of us who are really strictly consortium level and not member agency affiliated, actually, you know, I'm housed at a college, but I serve the consortium and all my work is consortium level work, not directly related to classroom.
So Hartnell doesn't have any hours.
They have a separate, their funding it's a separate pot of money.
Yeah.
So.
I would say if it makes it simpler, just to leave that out if you can, because it would skew the data if we're looking at, because what Tim does, he crunches the numbers and looks at a regression chart, and then he can cluster the expenses and the hours of instruction. So we get to you know, an hourly rate. I think currently it's between $10 and $20 an hour, which is great to know. And so if we start throwing in other stuff, it might skew that a little bit if it's not directly affiliated with the classroom cost. So I don't know. I think it's up to you guys to see if that makes sense. Like I said, it's the variation is going to be difficult. And this is kind of the best information that we have right now. The funny thing is the legislature hasn't really done anything with this information. They haven't asked questions about it. So I think we're safe until, you know, one of our professional organizations wants to go forward with a new model or recommendation. Then I think we'd want to start asking questions about, you know, what model are you looking at? What data are you using? So, and we don't want to make this too much work for everyone. We know it's a lot of work anyway. So I would say that's a judgment call, Kristen, unfortunately. I wish I could be more specific, but I think that's going to vary from each consortia to consortia of how they operate. Annabelle says, so expenses should only be related to instructional only. Consortia admin expenses should not be folded in if they are supporting non-credit. So like Kristen's situation, Annabelle, I think it's a judgment call. If you feel you're contributing to those hours of instruction, then you could add them in. If your member is offering classes, if you feel you're a part of that. The only thing is, you know, you probably contributed not just to your college, but also maybe to the other members. So that's where it gets tricky and really detailed and could be complex. So I'll leave it up to you guys to determine. That is a good point. So if we ever got into deeper dive on this, we'd have to consider these things that Annabelle and Kristen brought up, as well as the other comments in the prior webinar on this topic. So Kelly says, we've reported all the instructional hours as well. It's just how we report the expenditures across CAEP. So like I said, Kelly, you know, judgment call on how much expenses you feel contributed to this instruction hours to report. It's easier for a member that doesn't have the consortia costs, but if you do have those consortia costs built in, then you'd have to figure out what's the most appropriate way to show how those expenses informed or contributed to the instructional hours. Grace says, my site is part of 2 consortia. How do I do this? I complete with the same information for both. So what we've allowed, Grace, for the few.
I know. I mean, we'll make it happen.
Oh, okay. So please mute. Sorry. So Grace, what we've done for the few consortia that are part of members that are part of 2, you just pick one consortia and you can report all your data under that one. We didn't, I mean, if you want to go to the trouble of splitting it, you can, but because it was so complex, we allowed for like New Haven down in the Bay Area, because they're members of 2, Jessica would just report under one member. I mean, one consortia, if that makes sense. And then Thatcher says, what about multi-college system where there is both non-credit instructional hours and consortia-wide support related costs? So we're only looking at instructional hours. We weren't asked to report the consortia-wide supports. So, you know, if you can, like we said before, Thatcher, if you feel there's a strong tie to those instructional hours, then you can include those expenses, but that's kind of a slippery slope there, kind of tricky and more complex. We don't want you to do any more work than you have to, and you're not going to get dinged for that. So I would say whatever makes sense and makes it easier for you to submit, because you know your program, we don't. And then Guillermo asks, so counseling costs should be left out. If they're not associated with the instructional hours, unfortunately, we have no other way of tracking them consistently. So we were asked for instructional hours. Unless the counselor is embedded into the classroom with the instructional hours, which is sometimes can happen, but it depends on how the class is set up. So if it's just standalone counselor, those would be service hours, and we don't have a consistent way of tracking those hours. Don't our financial numbers have to equal?
You've answered that, Neil, already, I think, in some of your responses above. So
okay, you're okay with that then?
yeah, I don't often cut you that kind of slack. So
Okay, you're not going to put me into a stroke scenario
no, you're good. You're good.
online. All right, and then Dana said I was due on September 1st. So when is it really due? I mean, the estimates. So if you haven't submitted already, I mean, we'll probably be looking at the estimates. CDE will be looking at them probably by late next week. So technically, you could get away with spending a little more time on this. Due dates are due dates, but you know, CDE will look at that for their federal reporting. And then the actuals aren't due till December 1st. So that's the more critical date. But we hope that gives you a little flexibility there. But, you know, sometimes if you give members some slack, you'll never get them to get back on track. So, all right. So Todd asked, with regards to Frank's question, the answer is no, correct? Right. Because what you're spending isn't necessarily aligned with what your allocation is, because people have carryover, people don't spend all their money, people spend more than their allocation. So you're correct, Todd. The answer is no. Okay, so Serena says, so sorry if this was clarified, but in terms of expenses, isn't all of our staff there to support instruction, and are we now only looking at teacher costs? No, we're looking at all the cost of instruction. So whether it's classified, management, certified, custodial, childcare, I don't know. Well, I don't know, that's a tricky one because that's sports. But I mean, so, you know, anything associated with that hours of instruction, and it's not just reserved for certified. It includes other levels of staff that support that instruction. So you're correct. Okay, and then Bruce says, can we go back to the question, Frank? Okay, I thought I answered that. And then I'll round them up. Okay, good. So I think are we moving on? I think we're moving on. Oh, so really quick. Oh, I just wanted a funding update. I just wanted to really quickly, for you colleges, we found out that CAEP is not on the deferral list. There are a lot of other programs on the deferral list, like Student Equity, CalWorks, DSPS. There's a whole long list, but CAEP is not on the deferral list. So you should get your allocations like normal for CAEP. So that's all good news. So if you were worrying about that, don't worry about that. I'll keep you posted if anything changes on that. And then as far as K-12 and fiscal agents that are K-12 direct funded, finance is troubleshooting to get the interagency agreement pushed through. So they are working with the Chancellor's Office and CDE. And so that is speeding up the process. And so I'm hoping that this can all be put to bed very soon, and then allocations can roll out to K-12 fiscal agents, county office fiscal agents, and those K-12 and county office direct funded members. The only thing is when the state finishes, then it goes to controllers, then controllers works with your county office, then your county office works with your district. So there is still some processing to come, but we see the light at the end of the tunnel. Can't give you an exact date, but it's moving, and we have finance involved, which usually gets people's attention. So we're hoping that this will push things along very quickly. Cindy says, so is there a possibility CalWorks for adult ed will be impacted? So if you're a college and you get CalWorks, I think some of that money will be deferred, meaning it'll come a little bit later. But I think normally it's always late. So maybe it's the same old with CalWorks, but they are on the deferral list. So, but that's for colleges. I don't think that's the case on K-12. At least I haven't heard anything on K-12 if they're doing deferrals. Because the way K-12s operate is you have Prop 98 funds, there's a guaranteed funding level. I don't know how that works with other fund sources outside of the, the LCFF, but CDE, if there was something, they might inform us about that. So I haven't heard anything yet. Okay. Yeah, so Cindy, there is a possibility. I think I would just put up your caution flag for CalWorks and try to find out. But I would put them on the list of possible deferrals or late allocations. And then Veronica, did you want to talk about Q4 reporting in NOVA?
Yeah, so we just wanted to send a reminder about Q4 reporting in the fact that once it's certified by the consortium, we are no longer able to open it up to make any changes. And so we're advising everyone, and this was in a newsletter a couple of weeks ago, but we're advising everyone to make sure that your expenditures across all quarters, so even quarter 1, 2, and 3, making sure that they are all correct before you certify as a consortium. If a member submits and need to go back and make changes, they are able to, as long as the consortium has not certified. And in addition to making sure the expenditures are correct, we want to make sure that you all understand about the budget revisions. So once the Q4 is certified, the budget for 2019-20 is no longer accessible. So if you have any negative expenditures, it's not a requirement to make sure that you do a budget revision. However, I have been working extensively with certain consortia, taking care of these issues because they, have a negative budget remaining balance, and then it goes into multiple years and it creates a bit of a problem. So if you do have the negative budget remaining for the end of Q4, it would be wise just to make sure that you go in and complete that budget revision to clean that up so that your remaining balance isn't altered, and then you get to, let's say, next year or the following year, and then it becomes more of a problem with it not being fixed. So yeah, that's definitely the reminder. After the fact, we do receive requests to open up the expenditure reports, but we are unable to. So we strongly advise that you take care of those expenditures and the budget revisions prior to certifying for the consortium, which that due date is September 30th. So you still have time to work through it, but we advise that you take care of it. And if you have any questions, I've been working with members and consortia on this in particular. So if you have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out to us, either myself or Holly, and we can always jump on a Zoom call with you all and work through whatever issues you may be experiencing, whether it's contact information or related to expenditures, not being able to submit, etc.
So Veronica, the point of no return is when the consortia lead certifies Q4. So if they had a member that all it takes is a member to reject it, and then they could go back in and change it. But once that consortia lead or primary certifies it, then it's locked. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yep, it's locked at that point.
Okay, so it's on you guys, your consortia leads, I see that are on this call. Once you certify Q4, you've done it. You can't go back. So just remember that it's your fault, not our fault. Just kidding. But anyway, so just keep that in mind. And I know we have deadlines and all, but you can take your time to make sure everything is right before you go ahead and press that certification button for Q4. No pressure. Veronica, Michelle had a question about, they have a $10.21 negative. Do they need a revision for that?
Yeah, it's not required. So you don't have to have a revision for it. We just advise to eliminate any future problems to take care of those negative expenditures or negative budget remaining balances.
Okay. And then Shannon reminds us the 2021 total budget doesn't update until 1920 is certified, correct? Is that a correct statement, Veronica? Because of the carryover?
Yes, that is correct, Shannon, and for everyone else. So right now, if you haven't certified your Q4 expenditure report, your total available funds for 2020-21, it will be doubled. And the reason is because the system hasn't calculated your carryover amount. For some reason, it automatically gives you double your allocation. But once you certify that Q4 expenditure report, the system will update to your carryover amount. So that carryover amount will be added to your 2020-21 allocation.
Okay, and that's, I think we got her email from another consortia that said, hey, you gave us all this extra money. And we're like, no, we didn't give you the extra money. You just didn't certify your budget. So it looks like you have more. Is that kind of what's happening out there, Veronica?
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
Okay, so no gifts. You know, this isn't like, let's make a deal or whatever. It's on you, you guys. You guys are giving yourself or doubling your allocation if you don't certify. So Serena asked, and I don't know if we could do this, but maybe Veronica, you have a top 10 list. Can you please review what things to look for to make sure everything is right? What are kind of the main things that you and Holly see that people forget or that they contact you about, that it would be good for everybody to remember that these are the most asked for or most commonly requested fixes?
So there are a range of things, and we can probably put something together and send it out to everyone. But one of the main things is the budget, the negative budget remaining amounts. So over the years, people have been, and they have been, I guess, the negative amount continues and it adds up. And so when they get down to the end of a program year and then they have a negative overall budget, then they wonder, you know, why do I have negative amounts going into the next program year? And part of the reason is because they continue to let that negative amount grow over years. So that's one thing. The second thing is by Q4, sometimes the expenditures come in less than what was reported in the previous quarters. And so because NOVA is on a cumulative system, there is a need to go back and make an amendment to the expenditures to account for the reduction in the Q4 expenditures. Because remember, NOVA will not let you submit any expenditures that are less than the previous quarter. So that's another thing. And then in general, because some districts, their accounting does not always match NOVA. And so the district may say you have X amount of carryover, which is more or less than what NOVA is saying. And it's sometimes because the expenditures were either not updated or they were inputted incorrectly. And so going through that process of figuring out where the discrepancy is and then fixing it based on that. So, you know, making sure as much as possible that the district's expenditures matches what's in NOVA as well as the carryover. Those are probably like the top 3 issues that we experience. Another thing is and this could be useful going into the next program year when we do the budget and work plan. We still have members and agencies who are submitting and certifying budgets that do not have that forecast. And so they may be over or under, you know, their expenditures, but they don't have that corrective action plan, or they sometimes do, but just making sure that that corrective action plan, there's something in there. And it's totally up to all of you what you want in for your forecast, your expenditure forecast, but that triggers the corrective action plan or not. And then, of course, making sure that you're spending down your monies before you get to the deadline. So we've had some inquiries about spending down 2018-19 money prior to the end of the program year. So those are kind of the bigger ones that we've been dealing with. But again, we can probably put something together so that everyone has the same information and those workaround scenarios that will help you in this process.
That's great. Shamila says her members are having trouble submitting their Q4 numbers. They enter, but the submit button is not active. And then some of the other consortia leads have said, oh, they might have not certified that they did not exceed the indirect, or maybe their budget or work plan isn't certified. And then Yulene says this has happened to several members. I tried typing the dollar number first, check the agree box, write the corrective action. So what, Veronica, what do you see when people contact you about this, similar to what Shamila's members are going through?
So the number one thing that we see in this case is that they are potentially entering expenditures that are less than the previous quarter. That's probably the number one reason why some people are unable to submit their Q4 expenditures, because the previous quarter is greater than what they are entering. So I would look at that first. And then there are notes in the expenditure report at the bottom, like underneath the submit button where it's supposed to be blue, but it's gray. There could be a note there that says something like the previous quarter has not been submitted, or the budget and work plan is open or not certified, so you can't enter. It'll provide you with some context about what could be going on. If none of those work, Shamila, we can hop on Zoom and look at what you are seeing and try to figure it out from there. Sometimes that's the most simplest way for Holly and I to be able to pinpoint what's going on and be able to provide assistance.
All right, and then Kelly says we have that issue right now with Q3, slightly lower in one object code. So will we go back and uncertified Q3 and fix the expenses and then resubmit and certified and then input Q4? I would assume that's correct, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then Kathy says, is there an audit trail of certification and amending of the reports? I think there is, isn't there?
Yeah, there's an export under supporting documents.
And they can see all the changes that have made. So plus the members get notified when changes are made or amended, amendments are done, correct? Okay. So there is, Kathy, so there is an audit trail, plus there's a notification process every time a change is made. If someone revises their budget, amends their allocation, each of the member reps get notified that that's happening. So it's very transparent. And then the last question here is from Michelle about interest. And so Michelle, we don't want the interest in NOVA because it would screw up the allocation amounts. So you can keep that separate. I know your accounting office probably keeps that, and that's fine. But we don't want the interest sent to us, nor do we want it posted in NOVA. For audit purposes, you'll probably be keeping that on your accounting spreadsheets that track this a little differently, probably by program year, and that's fine, but we don't want to see it in NOVA because NOVA is just tracking the allocations. Okay. Veronica, anything else to add before we move to Topsboro?
No, I don't have anything else.
Okay. So Topsboro is really quick. Just a reminder, I think we're down to about 20 member districts that haven't submitted their final for the year. And I've notified all the consortia leads. So good job. That's like, I don't know how many reporting members we have, like over 400. So the fact we only have 20, hopefully our data won't be for 1920. I'm assuming it's going to look somewhat similar to 1819, might be a little bit lower, but not drastically. I think 2021 will be significantly different just because of the whole online and the pre and post testing, you know, and all that. I think that data will look a little different, but we're down to about 20 that have to submit, so that's a good thing. And then I'll just segue into the annual plan certification. I know some of you, I think there was about, I don't know, how many, Veronica, maybe 20, 25 that haven't, they've submitted their annual plans, but they just haven't approved it. Is
Right, I
that
want to
correct?
say it's probably closer to 20, yeah.
Okay. And so some people already went in and did it. Some people are waiting for like a member. Some of their members, someone retired, so they got to get a new member rep to go in and certify. So there's a few things. The only thing we wanted to let you know is that if you don't certify your annual plan, then your members can't start working on their budget and their plans. So it kind of stalls the process. So, but I think everybody knows that and they're aware of the situation. So just keep that in mind. And then we already talked about the funding update. And then Veronica, do you want to talk about the summit?
Yes, I can. In yesterday's newsletter, and we'll post the URLs in the chat, but in yesterday's newsletter, we did announce that the summit registration is now open. And so we provided the link of where everyone can register. The cost to attend is free, and it's going to be a 4-day event. So it'll take place on October 26th through October 29th, and we will host sessions between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 2:30 p.m. between that Monday through Thursday. And then on that Tuesday from 2:30 to 2:30 to 4 will be the networking event. And yeah, so we definitely encourage everyone, their members, you know, teachers, counselors, transition specialists, etc., to register for this event. We have been receiving proposal submissions, and we have been reviewing them in conjunction with our summit advisory team. And we have been receiving quite a few of, all of the proposals have been really, really good. And so we're very excited about what we have to offer you all during this summit. And one last thing, the proposal submission deadline was, it was pushed back. So the deadline is now September 10th, just to give people more of an opportunity to submit proposals, especially if school started later this year, or maybe you just didn't have time to put a proposal together because you were working through your reopening plan, etc. So just an opportunity to give people more of, an opportunity to submit a proposal. We don't have unlimited slots available, but we have quite a few available. So we welcome everyone to continue to submit a proposal if you want to.
So Veronica, quick question from Crystal. Is there a limit to registration, or is it, I mean, we could have everyone come to the summit, right? Or is there a technical limit to how many people we can have register?
No, so we have capacity for 1,000, I believe. And so
Okay.
Anyone can register up until that 1,000 mark. And we'll continue to let the field know as we are moving along if we have run out of capacity. But
Is it first come, first serve, or are we limiting X amount per consortia?
No, it's first come, first serve. We are not doing our traditional method when we convene in person of, having that consortium allotment of personal identification numbers to allow their members to register. No, this year is first come, first serve for the virtual environment.
All right. Well, you guys better register because LA Consortium is going to swamp the registration list if you don't watch it. Just kidding.
Veronica, quick
ahead.
question. Yeah, the registration's asking for a file to upload, and I tried to upload my picture of a JPEG. I don't know if that's been, but it didn't take it. I don't know if that's been updated or if there's a reason for that.
Okay, did you receive some type of error message or anything?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, would you be able to send that to us so we can send it to the
Okay.
the virtual platform?
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And then Yulene says, and maybe you already mentioned this, when's the director's event? Or are we still having that?
Yes, we are still having that. It is October 5th, 2020, and it starts at 8 or 8:30 in the morning. So all of the consortia leads and members should have received an invitation. We don't have it as a public event on the website because it is more of a targeted day of training for directors and members. So if you did not receive that invitation, email TAP and we'll get the link to you so that you can register. I think we have capacity for 300 and we are at, I want to say 211 or 12, something like that. So we still have room for those who would like to register.
Thank you.
All right. And then when did you say the registration will open?
For the director's event?
For the summit, because people are already getting nervous about the
No,
first come, first serve.
Yeah, it opened yesterday. So
Oh,
I'll
okay.
post a link in the chat.
Yeah, because on the Cal Adult Ed website, it says opening soon.
Yeah, we're getting that fixed. That's why we directed everyone to the actual platform to register, but we're getting that updated.
And Shannon just reminded everyone that her summit registration confirmation went to her spam. So if you don't receive that, check your spam, just in case. All right. And Nancy Miller, we're going to get to Kelly's question in a second. I just want to take care of the summit question. So Nancy says we have 2 new member reps. When I added them to the appropriate agency, I had to take myself off the list, and Nova did not allow me to put myself back on as a rep of the consortia, as I am the person who enters the program information. So she should just probably contact you guys and you can troubleshoot her, correct? Or is there a quick fix, Veronica, that you could tell her? Because she is the consortia lead, but for some reason she got knocked off and now she needs to get back on.
Okay, yeah, contact us for that.
Okay. So Nancy, contact TAP and they will take care of you. So I think I saw Carolyn on the participant list, and I'm going to go back to Kelly's question about an update on WIOA 2 funding allocations. If Carolyn has anything to share, if she's available.
Yeah, I'm here, Neil.
Oh, okay.
So first of all, welcome back. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
So update on WIOA, it is with our chief deputy for signature. And so hopefully that will happen pretty quickly so that it can get moved on to communications, and then we'll get the GAN. So we're hoping for, hang on, I'm trying to multitask. I have to turn the other volume down. So we're hoping that we will have those to be uploaded into the system, the reporting system, hopefully in the next couple weeks.
All right. So now we still have time. I mean, Veronica, do you have anything else? I was going to open it up for just general questions.
No, I don't have anything else.
All right, and then Carolyn, do you have anything to add there? If you,
I do not.
okay. And then Kelly responded to Carolyn's information. Can we at least get allocation amounts, even if not uploaded for budget planning?
You'll need to call your consultant and call them next week. I think that's when we'll have it where they'll be able to see it. So if you want to call your consultant next week.
All right.
And then I did want to add, Neil, that we have had the student intake survey went out yesterday, was posted yesterday, and we've had like over 400 responses. It's
Wow.
great. So it's really useful information. And I also do want to give a thank you to everyone who did the PPE survey. I know that was really a fast turnaround, but the information that you all provided, those of you that did it, it was helpful. And we got a big shout out and thank you from the person at CDE who's trying to organize all that to ensure that you all get PPE for your programs. And I see Laura's question about the survey being available in Spanish. We have an office in the department that does that kinds of translation. So I'm going to be working with them to see if we can get it translated. They're the ones that did all of the Social Security number things translated. If we run into problems with that, I may look for volunteers from our adult ed community to see if we can get some folks to help us do the translation on those.
All right. And Carrie said that Chinese would be helpful too.
Yeah, we have the 10. We would do it in the same 10 languages. We'd start with the languages that we have the Social Security one in. So
Great. All right. Anything else, Carolyn?
no.
All right. And then I don't know if we have anybody on from CASAS. Is Jay on the line? I don't mean to put him on the spot, but if he's there, or if anybody else from CASAS. Rochelle was just asking if CASAS could recommend a training or webinar that demonstrates the process for the new DIR report submission via the report wizard. And so maybe that's something, Rochelle, follow up with TAP and they can facilitate the connection with CASAS. And then CASAS can respond to you maybe with a link of a webinar or training packet that they put together for the new reporting process.
Neil, this is,
Oh,
sorry,
go ahead.
this is Holly. We did have a question come in about allocations. And the question was, will everyone be receiving 12 allocations or will the first 3 come together at once?
So it depends on if you're a K-12 fiscal agent or direct funded. Depending on the month it's allocated, the first installment will be bundled. So if you get it in September, it will include July, August, and depending on the cutoff date, maybe September, and then you'll get it monthly after that. Some of the colleges got it, I think, this month. So it would have been 2 months, depending on the timing. So they are supposed to give it in installments, but that first one is usually multiple months because of the delay. So.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Sure.
Oh, and thank you to Sophia. So if I can't get it translated, Sophia, that would be great. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Oh, and there's the link to the registration. So I think there's 160 something people on, you can jump in and take those slots right now and leave the other 800 for the other people.
Oh, and Ryan just posted a training that is September 9th, generating reports using Tops Pro Enterprise. It's from 1 to 2:30.
All right.
And he included the link to register. Thanks, Ryan.
Wow. Yeah, what am I doing here? I'll just let you guys, you know, kind of run the program. You're doing a lot better than I am. Connie asked, I'm assuming this is for the summit. Do we still have to submit a photo? I'm assuming that's
So
related
at
to
this
the summit.
at this time, yes, we're working with the virtual platform to make it an optional. If you do not want to submit your actual photo, you're more than welcome to submit, let's say, your agency's logo or maybe your consortium logo, just to bypass that, or you can hold off until we make it optional. So the choice is yours, but we're working on it.
Can you submit your favorite icon, whatever that might be, or is that taboo? So let's say Connie likes flowers and wants to submit a daisy as her photo. Is that inappropriate?
It's not inappropriate. It's an
Okay.
appropriate photo, yes, but
Okay.
inappropriate
So
photo.
Connie, you have some options there. All right. So, or an avatar, yeah, that would be good. Or my giant, oh, where's my giant drink cup? Yeah, here we go. Or you could do that icon, right? So my vintage Slurpee cup. All right. Well, anybody else have any? I'm sure things back to school is going great. Students are showing up. Everyone is in the testing room. No one's getting sick. I'm sure it's all good, right? Well, because your allocations are based on need, you don't have to worry about things like students not showing up. We understand that, you know, we're all dealing with, you know, the situation of what's going on with everyone at home, and we have broadband issues, we have equipment issues, we have digital literacy issues, we have family support issues. So we're just going to have to understand how this is all evolving in the field. So we will be there to support you in any way. And I think, you know, everyone has done a great job. OTAN and CASAS and WestEd and TAP and all the other vendors and the field experts have hung in there and done a great job of supporting everyone through this crazy spring and summer and now into fall. So I don't know, Carolyn, do you hear any concerns at the state level about adult education? I'm not really hearing any of that.
I think one of the things that came up today that we're hearing some of the challenges has to do with adult schools that are associated with a K-12 district who is really not allowing the adults to meet, and the guidance that has come out of CDE, I see Connie shaking her head, yes. The guidance that has come out of CDE is related to really directed at K-12, talking about children and youth, and we don't serve children or youth, we serve adults and young adults. And so wanting to try and get a distinction between that for our adult schools that are in those districts so they can do testing if they want to do testing appropriately in a lab. CASAS has provided very clear guidance on that, so have HiSET and GED. And so I'm working with our division director to see where we can ensure that the guidance for adults is different than the guidance for children.
Right. And the same thing goes on the college side. There's plenty of programs that are on that deferral list, but adult education isn't one of them. So you might be involved in conversations about these deferrals, but we're not delaying our funds for CAEP. So that's a case, just like Carolyn is saying, as we get caught up in the K-12, you also could get caught up in these conversations that are affecting community college and credit programming. But we're so far so good. So you might have to deal with that at the local level as well. But let's see, anything else? Oh, anything new on AB 1384? Does anybody know what AB 1384 is? Todd, typical Todd stumping the experts. Liability related legislation. I haven't heard about that one.
So I think this has to do with schools, education institutions, and Todd, you can certainly jump on and speak if I'm getting it wrong, but it has to do with schools cannot be held liable for students getting, or teachers probably getting COVID while at school. Looks like Beth and Todd both are on it, so hopefully one of them will say whether I have that correct.
I think so, yeah. It was legislation related to limit, or at least make districts feel better with regard to liability to having folks come back to school. Not that anybody can't sue anybody, but
right.
I don't know how that would apply to adult ed. Districts probably look at, like you said earlier, the K-12, that's their focus with those issues, and are adults looked upon differently, or might it be more liable to have adults on campus? But I was hoping that legislation would maybe send the message that there's the expectation if you choose to come back to school, or when we come back to school, that it limits that mentality to sue somebody for something.
Right, yeah, and so that's a great question, Todd. And I'm actually going to shoot that towards Dawn Kepke to see what she knows about that and how it might relate to adult education.
And the last I heard, it was going to committee like that week before the break. I'm not good with the legislative schedule, but it was supposed to go to committee sometime after the start of August, and I just didn't know where that went, or if it's not considered to be viable legislation.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's a great question though about how it relates to adults, and we've been trying to track some other legislation. The learning loss legislation was passed, and the governor is expected to sign it. Adult education is listed in that, but it means that you're going to have to be at the table, so to speak, the virtual Zoom table, when they are talking about that funding. And and that's the only way, right? We have to be at the table to make our presence known, and you'll want to have some data to talk about the learning loss for your adult students, so that hopefully you can get some information.
So
and then
Santiago said that the legislation did not pass.
What didn't pass? Really? I thought I just saw something that it did. Huh. All right, I'm going to go back and look, because I just saw someone sent me something about that yesterday.
Okay, and here's the last question on SB 554, which is dual enrollment of adult students. Are adult students restricted in the courses they can take, or is that up to each community college? I heard that this is focused on high school diploma, high school equivalency, enrolling in career education credit programs, but legislation does not specify career education only. Nancy, there is some specificity on SB 554, and I think it does involve those adult students that are working on their high school diploma and enrolling in CTE. It's kind of like similar to ability to benefit. But if you need to look at that guidance, there was a memo that we put in the newsletter this last week that details the specifics for SB 554. And let's see, and Dana said, because Dana's consortium has been involved in this, she said she didn't think so. Doesn't have to be career ed only. So I would look at the memo to get the final, but it seems like there is some flexibility there according to Dana. And then Thatcher says there was an update in CCC Apply that will allow students over the age of 21 to register as special admin students. So that's good. So they can take advantage of the tuition break. And then Kristen said, I thought we were waiting for more guidance. So the guidance came out, Kristen. It's in the newsletter this week, a little bit farther down, but there's a memo from the Chancellor's office detailing that, so you can take a look at it. And what is the reason for the special admin students for students over the age of 21? Not sure about that, Thatcher. Somebody else from the college system might be able to explain that. There is a contact person in that memo that worked on that, on the special admin and the CCC Apply. There's got to be a reason for that. So, oh, and there's the memo right there. Thank you, TAP. And then, so Chrissy, I'm not sure on the specifics, but I would read the memo. And then if you do have further questions, there is a contact person on that. But Greg says he thinks it's high school diploma. And we just opened up a whole bunch of questions here. So I don't want to keep any, we're 5 minutes over. So if you do have follow-up questions on SB 554, read the memo. There is a contact person. If they are not responsive, you can always contact TAP and we can facilitate that connection to the people in the Chancellor's office if you did have specific questions. And if there's enough need, we could probably try to coerce them to do a webinar on the topic. So I don't know, Veronica, anything else to add?
Can I, Neil, can I add one thing real quick?
Oh, sure.
So the learning loss legislation is SB 820 and it's actually still alive. It hasn't, I just pulled it to look at it. So it was amended yesterday, or it was amended last week. So I'll try and track it and we'll get something put into the CAEP newsletter for next week if we need to let you all know.
All right. Okay, and Veronica, to close out, anything?
No, other than what we shared. So definitely register for the summit, submit any proposals that you may have. We're still accepting proposals until September the 10th. And again, contact TAP if you are experiencing any difficulty as it relates to your Q4 expenditure reports, working on next year's budget and work plan, anything NOVA related. Definitely feel free to reach out. Also, if you have any new administrators, we will be sending communication to you all later on this afternoon regarding our CAEP onboard training for new consortia lead and administrators. It will be September 25th from 8 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. So we'll send that communication out as well as the link to register. We just opened it this morning. So be on the lookout for that, and any new consortia leads or administrators on the line. Or you don't have to be new this year, 1 to 3 years, the workshop will be beneficial for you. So be on the lookout for that. And that's all I have.
All right, and thank you for all the support. It was really great and I appreciate it. And so now next time you don't have to be so nice to me and you can, ask the tough questions. So I think I got a pass today. And Veronica and Carolyn took all the hardball questions as well as Holly. So I'll try to be ready next week.
All right. Thank you all very much. Have a great afternoon.
Okay, bye.